Welcome to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered, the podcast that takes the mystery out of commercial real estate and makes it accessible for everyone. I'm Caleb David, a broker, investor, and community builder with over a decade of experience helping businesses and individuals bring their visions to life. Here we break down the market, share expert insights, and talk about the opportunities that commercial real estate creates for businesses and communities alike. No fluff, no gatekeeping, just real, unfiltered conversations that empower you to navigate the space with confidence. So whether you're an investor, a business owner, or simply curious about commercial real estate, welcome. Let's dive in. Welcome everyone to Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. Today we have another special guest, Wendell Butler. Wendell is a seasoned real estate investor, ex-military officer, and entrepreneur with a background in lending, underwriting, and deal structuring. With prior experience as a loan officer, Wendell has a deep understanding of financial intricacies. Look, I can do it.
Heck yeah.
Real estate investing, allowing him to strategically grow his own portfolio across Massachusetts, North Carolina, and South Carolina. In addition to his own investments, Wendell is committed to helping other real estate investors scale, leveraging his expertise in underwriting, negotiations, and assembling top-tier teams to streamline deal stabilization and maximize returns. As the host of the Real Estate Take podcast, Wendell shares valuable insights on commercial lending, seller negotiations, and value-add investment strategies. Wendell, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Caleb. Excited to spread some knowledge and just talk a little shop about, commercial real estate.
Awesome. Well, hopefully my tongue will be able to work the rest of the time and I won't be stumbling over my words, but I think there's still going to be great nuggets of information that you're going to be able to share. And I appreciate the opportunity of being on your podcast. And that was just a lot of fun. So let's jump right in. I guess I want to know with your past experience, kind of like, how did you end up in this space? And what are some of the things that you really love about what you do?
Yeah, so I wasn't always into real estate or commercial or even like residential, not like real estate as a whole. I actually, I guess, fell into it is the way I would say. Kind of like most people, I feel like most people don't really grow up and say, oh, let's say have like family that's in real estate, like I'm gonna do real estate. So originally I was, going to school to become a physician assistant. And I did like all the, undergrad requirements, got the hours as like a CNA with the hours you needed to apply for PA school. And like as I was applying, I just realized I really didn't like school. Like I got through school, I got like a good GPA, but I can literally tell you that I just didn't really. I mean, I learned stuff, but like I didn't try to really enjoy it. Like I just did what was necessary to get through it. And then I kind of had like a moment like, why am I gonna go to grad school straight out of undergrad without like trying out something else or just exploring a little bit? Because I kind of like locks. It's a physician assistant as well. It's like a 2 to 3 year program. You're like locked in, and it's expensive, and it's like a grind every single day. And I was like, if I get out of there and I have like this license, physician assistant license, I'm gonna feel like I have to use that. Like I can't just like not use it because I went through so much for it. So took a year off. Make it a short story. I went to Miami, hung out with some entrepreneurial friends. I call it like my quarter life crisis because I was like living paycheck to paycheck, bartending, and just learning about what other people do. Learned about people that did, e-commerce business, retail business, even like real estate, things like that. And I'm like, okay, you can make money totally different ways and have a lot of freedom. So then I moved back to the New England area. I started getting into sales just because I knew sales was important. And then eventually I read some Bigger Pockets books, listened to Big Pockets podcast, and that's where I kind of was like, all right, let me do a little like real estate type stuff. And I knew that I just didn't have the money to really do it, but that's when I decided, hey, I might as well like get a job that lets me learn more about real estate as well. So that's when I got into lending. That's why I started utilizing kind of other people paying me, like using my 9 to 5, getting paid to learn about a very intricate, important part of real estate investing. And then, yeah, I just got into it that way. And the biggest aha moment was like I bought a condo, not really for investment. I was just like, I want to own a property. And I bought it. I live and flipped it while I was in it, just changed up the kitchen and stuff. And I had like a roommate that was renting from me, so I was saving some expenses. And then after a year, I sold it and I made like a $70,000 profit, which was just tax free. And then I looked at that check and I was like, I just made double my salary, like after taxes, in a year of just really fixing up a kitchen and just waiting. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna really dive into this real estate thing. That's kind of how I was like, all right, time to get going. And yeah, that's basically like how I got into
That's
it.
really exciting. Well, and I really relate to what you said about kind of falling into it because for me, my background is nonprofit world, and you work really hard, you get burnt out, you're helping people, but it's like at some point something's got to give, and so I fell into it as well by accident, and I'm very grateful that accident happened. So, well, we're going to kind of jump into some questions for you in regards to value add opportunities in today's commercial real estate market. What are some of the best value add opportunities that you have seen or that you're seeing right now in commercial real estate?
Yeah, so I'm a big I'm from the New England area, which was like a lot of multifamily. So I predominantly grew up. So it's a lot of older multifamily buildings, not really new builds. And what I'm seeing in areas like that is that there's a lot of opportunity in revitalizing kind of older buildings and making them produce more rent by taking, you know, maybe mom and pop owners that own the property didn't really update it to like the best that they could, and they kept the rents lower just because they didn't really want to deal with it. I mean, they bought the property like 20 years ago for like $400,000. Now it's worth like 5 million, right? It's like, so they don't really, they're like sitting on the equity. They're like, I'm not gonna force these tenants to like pay more. I don't really care because their exit is so huge. They're just like, when I exit, they can deal with it.
Right.
Um, but the thing about that is like you're buying the property at like a new valuation of like, a lot more than what they bought it for. But you have the ability to uh, renovate the units pretty easily because with rental units, you usually have to put a lot of money into it. It's usually like 7 to 10K a
Wow.
unit is all you really got to do to like revitalize it in the New England area. You can raise the rents pretty quickly, and then they do have like a lot of Section 8 type housing, which people are afraid of Section 8, but in the New England area, because the mass like say in Massachusetts, just the government is like so efficient there with the taxes that they collect from property tax, etc., income tax, and they utilize that in like Section 8 vouchers because they understand that there's a housing crisis, especially in New England because it's so freaking expensive. So you can utilize those a lot really well, and it's actually really good tenants that are in utilizing those vouchers because it's like people that are making $70,000 can be approved for Section 8 in that area because it's so expensive to get housing. Um, so like that's a huge proponent of commercial real estate that I think you can get a lot of value from because you can buy those properties, have a pretty easy path to going towards revitalizing it, increasing the rent, increasing the NOI of the property, which again increases how much the property's worth. And then you get like a cash out refinance and just rinse repeat, kind of like a burr with the commercial real estate. Another aspect that I'm seeing is because of the supply shortage across the United States, a lot of advantages that you could do is take older apartment complexes or like multifamilies that are commercial and condense them and then sell them as condos. And there's a huge benefit there because you can buy say you can buy like I was looking at one that was a 20 unit in like North Carolina that was townhouse style. You could buy that for like 3 million bucks, which does not work as a long-term rental at all. Like the rents just don't work, right? But if you can condense them, which most towns and cities are okay with that because of the housing shortage. Plus, they get more taxes, they get more people moving there. That they get benefits from it. So they're like, okay, you can sell each condo for like you know $250,000. So then you're buying in at 3 million or so. You can exit at like 5 million, and the cost of condonizing is really it's not as expensive as you think. It's more of a time thing. And I would say for 20 units, it's probably like, $20 to $40,000 with attorney fees and condonizing and working with the town to make sure everything is correct. And then sure, you got to revitalize it a little bit, but like that's a huge value add play that you can do in commercial real estate that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So when you do the condoizing, what you have to set up like an HOA. What is it? Talk to me a little bit about what's involved with that and how you've handled that in the past.
Yeah, so I haven't done any specific colonizing yet. I've just underwrote a lot, and I've had partners that do it as well. So that's just kind of what I'm seeing. But predominantly, what you want to do is one, you want to before you jump into anything, and I'd say like colonizing my exit plan, you want to talk to the town and the city and the zoning and everything like that, and be like, can I do this? Do you guys support this? Because
Yes.
if you get into it without checking with them and it doesn't work as a long-term rental, and then you go to do it and they're like, no, you can't do that, then you just lost a lot of money
Yeah.
because you're stuck with it. You can't sell it for what you bought it for. I mean, you could, but like it might take a while for someone to buy it and see like the potential, whatever. Um, but that's one. So you want to make sure do a ton of due diligence before. Setting up like the HOA and stuff is really attorneys. So real estate attorneys can help with that. They kind of put together like a master. It's like a master plan of like a HOA.
Mhm.
And property managers can also help with this too. Some property managers specialize in they just want to do HOAs because they don't want to deal with like tenants and like filling and stuff. They just want to deal with like keep maintaining a property, making sure like if tenants have complaints or not tenants, like owners of the condos have complaints about like a master or a main pipe or something bursting, like they can get someone out there. They're just taking care of like the property as a whole, not really dealing with like the
Move in,
people
move
that
out.
live there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So some property managers love that because it's a lot more passive. And then you just kind of control the budget of the HOA. But you just work with like a real estate attorney for that to put that together, or just a property manager that's experienced with it. They can help you out. And it's really not that complicated. It's especially if someone already has like the documentation in place, they can kind of just cater it towards that property. And it's you got to get it approved by like the town and city and stuff. But I mean, if they've done it before and understand the codes of the town and the city and the zoning and stuff, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Well, and I think something that you brought up is the importance of doing that due diligence and having those conversations before you purchase the property. I often really recommend to my clients do some of that due diligence before you even go under contract so that you can see what's going on. However, if it's a hotter market and you need to tie the property up, just my recommendation always is make sure you've got enough due diligence time within the contract to make sure that you can get the answers that you need in case you need to get out of the contract and get your earnest money back. So I think a lot of people, I think especially for newer investors, the importance of asking questions, and just, I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, if you think it's a stupid question, ask the question anyway, because very likely that question is going to lead to other information that you need to know. Um,
Yeah.
so kind of what I want to go to, you kind of mentioned NOI earlier, and so net operating income. Let's start with, what is net operating income? Because I think we will have a lot of listeners that are wanting to get into this, but just kind of don't understand the lingo. So if you can kind of just share a little bit more about net operating income.
Yeah. So in commercial real estate, what really matters most is the net operating income, which essentially is how much the property, like very, very broad terms. It's like if you bought the property cash, how much is it netting after all the expenses to like run the property? And that is kind of the factor that they take to evaluate the property, as well as like, sales comps, but they weigh it more on that because it's a business because it's a commercial property. It's treated more like a business. So you basically take like your gross profits, so rent, if you have laundry and stuff like that, if you have fees for like I don't know, water, trash, pest control, whatever. You accumulate all the profit that you get from the property. You're going to minus out like the taxes because you always got to pay taxes, right? You're going to minus out the insurance because every property needs to be insured. And you're going to minus out like property management. Usually, even if you manage it yourself, you need to because banks look at it that way and appraisers look at it that way. And then like normal repairs and maintenance. So whatever factor that banks and appraisers use, you want to minus that out because properties, believe it or not, no matter what, you're gonna have to repair and maintain it. So you can't just say like, no, there's none. It's like, yes, there is. You don't got to worry about like the mortgage and stuff like that with NOI because it's treating it like you bought it cash. And then usually what you do in that area is a thing called a cap rate. And with new investors, you might hear it all the time, like, well, what's the cap rate? Oh, we're buying at a 6 cap, 7 cap, 8 cap, selling at a 10 cap. So that's just basically the number that people are purchasing properties at based off that NOI. So you calculate that NOI and you divide it by the normal price, like the normal cap rate that people purchase in that area. And that's usually what the value of the property is. So let's say the NOI is like $100,000. So you net $100,000 a year after all those, and then the cap rate is like a 7 cap in the area. You would take 100,000 divided by 7, and that is like $700,000. So that's usually the valuation of the property. Um, yeah.
That's super helpful. And what are some things that investors can do to increase a property's NOI?
So the number one thing you can do is obviously raise the rents, like try to get the rents higher to market. If they're lower, that's going to increase the NOI because it's going to increase the amount of profit coming in. You can try to, give different fees. Like you see these apartment, if anybody rents or has rented before, you see the apartment complexes that are like, oh yeah, the base rent is $1,000, but then you get in and you look at like your actual rent and it's like, oh, $1,000 plus $75 to trash,
Yeah.
$20 to water, $30 to pest control, $25 to maintenance of the property, $10 to parking. Like all those little fees add up to increase the NOI as well, which people don't really think about. And then another thing that a lot of investors don't think about is trying to reduce the property tax and trying to reduce insurance creatively. And also reducing like your repairs and maintenance. So if you put in like better finishes that last longer, if you put in better uh improvements and stuff like that that make that property and units and whatever last longer, that's going to help with NOI as well. But yeah, two things that people think are kind of out of their control, which aren't really, is insurance and taxes. Insurance, you can, play with getting different quotes, you can play with deductibles. And I will never understand why investors don't just ask for the highest deductible, because insurance is there for it's really there for a catastrophic issue. So if the property like blows up or catches on fire, then you want to use insurance. But if you have like a unit that like flooded, you usually don't want to touch that insurance, because if you do, your premium is going to skyrocket. They're probably going to kick you out, and then you got to go find another insurance. You're going to have the fact that you put a claim in on your record for like the next 7 years. So every other carrier is going to see that and raise your premium as well. So you're going to pay it on the back end for even longer, and you end up paying way more than if you just didn't, if you rather just kind of saved money aside for like those issues, or just put it into your underwriting for like, repairs and maintenance. So like put that money aside for those issues that come up. So insurance, you can like play with the deductible. I put all my deductibles up as high as I can, which lowers the insurance, which then helps the NOI. And then property tax as well. Never be afraid to appeal property tax. Never be afraid to go to the town and be like, hey, I'm paying way too much, and put together a package of other properties and what they're paying that are similar to yours and show them exactly why. And I've almost, with every property that I have, I've submitted appeals and I've lowered my taxes by like 10% almost every time. So don't be afraid. It is a pain. It's a pain in the butt, but they do work with you on it.
Yeah, I've had that experience here where sometimes you have to go back and forth a few times before you get that done. But I think having that
Yeah.
tenacity and willingness to just keep making those calls, please keep sending the documentation. One question that came up kind of as you're talking about increasing NOI, do you find that adding amenities, say like a gym or a pool or anything like that, affects the ability to raise rents to be able to increase that NOI?
So it really depends on the like for like area. So like say if you have an apartment complex or a commercial property in an area that other commercial properties, apartment complexes have pools and gyms, you're gonna want to look at like the difference between ones that don't have it and ones that do have it, and how much rent they're pooling uh in a difference. So say like the ones with the pool are pooling like, $2,000 a month for a unit because they have a pool and amenities and a gym. and then the other one that doesn't have it is pulling like 1,700, so $300 less. You just want to make sure that your return on adding those things makes sense. So whatever rent adjustment or potential rent that you could get, you got to make sure that the amount of money that you have to put in to add that gym or add that pool gives you a good return. And usually I look at it like you want to be able to, make at least 10 to 15% on your money, if you add those things, because otherwise it's just it's like a liability in a sense, because then you have a pool that's a liability, insurance goes up, you have a gym, your insurance goes up. So there's a ton of factors that come into play. So you got to make sure that all those factors increasing, the repairs and the build cost to do it, plus the insurance increase, plus the liability increase, and et cetera, makes sense with the amount of potential rent raise that you could get based on a like for like for the area. So there's a lot of math behind it, but
Yeah,
you just got to do the numbers.
well, absolutely. Yeah, that's really important. I mean, that insurance and liability really plays a lot into making that decision. How soon can you get the money back from your investment, not just to break even, but to actually get a return on that. So that's a great point. Well, what are some of the key mistakes that investors make when trying to do a value add deal?
Um, Number one, I would say, is getting too emotional.
Mm.
So you gotta just look at the numbers and detach yourself emotionally from all your properties. You have to look at it number wise, and almost prove to yourself that it makes sense. Take emotion out of it. Doesn't matter what you like. Doesn't matter what significant other likes, your friend likes. What matters is what does the market request or want in that area based on like data. And you only have to get it to the certain point that will get you the returns that you need. So let's say I see it all the time. So like someone will buy like an apartment complex that's in an area that's maybe like a C plus class or B minus, where you might not have to do like a full new kitchen with granite countertops and quartz and beautiful whatever kitchen, right? You might just have to do like, repaint the cabinets, change out the hardware, and then replace the uh countertops with like a new Formica, just really nice looking countertop. And the price point between like switching a whole kitchen to like just doing that is probably like between, you know, 3 to 5 grand. And then you start multiplying that by like how many units there are, like 20 units, that adds up a lot. And if you're emotionally like, I want to have the best property in this area, I don't care how much it costs. Um, but every other apartment complex there doesn't do that. I'm telling you, the tenants don't care that you have that, and they're not going to pay $500 more to go to yours. They're just going to go to the other ones. So you have to really look at the market, don't get emotional about it, and just really build up to what the market feedback is giving you. And I see investors all the time just get too emotional. They put too much into it. They try to increase either the property's value when they try to sell it, or the rents way too high, and then they're like, why is this not renting? And it's like, because you didn't look at the holistic view. You want to look at a holistic view of the area.
Well, I think too, being able to think about, okay, when I dispose of this property, when it's time for me to sell it, will I get that money back? And in a situation
Yeah.
like that, you're not going to get that back. And so I think that's your point of being, it's got to be very factual, understand the market, go tour other properties, so you see what the competition is, and you
Mhm.
gotta be thinking long term, not just the excitement, like you said, getting too emotional about, I want to do this, I want to be the best. That's great. However, it doesn't serve you.
Yeah. Turn that into, I want to be the best underwriter of my properties and the like best data finder of my properties. Just turn it into that instead of being like, I want to paint the walls gold. It's like,
Right,
don't,
right.
don't. Don't.
That's a great point. Well, we're going to
Yeah.
switch a little bit into lending since you've got some experience there. And, how does commercial lending kind of differ from residential, and what are some of the bigger challenges?
So residential is pretty, we'll start there. Residential is pretty cut and dry. Especially like when you're buying for like your primary house and stuff like that, they're just going to look at like just your income. So they're going to look at how much you make as an individual. Like there's certain rules around it, and it's mostly pretty strict rules. And it came from that 2008 like housing crisis. So they really look at your income. They make sure that you have a history of it to be able to allow you to get approved. That's the same for like residential rental properties if you go through conventional lending. Yeah, conventional lending, they're still going to look at like your personal income to see if you can support that. And then there's like hard money lending, private money lending, which is some residential and commercial. They mostly just look at how the property is going to produce and can the property support it. And then they look at like your track record and how much reserves of money you have to make sure that worst case scenario you can continue paying like their loan if things go wrong. Now, when you look at commercial, so like away from hard money, away from conventional, it's a lot more flexible and it's a lot more relationship based, I feel like. So they're going to look at the properties that you want to purchase, and they are going to look at the numbers, the historical data of the past 12 to 24 months of that property to see if it can support what you're trying to purchase it for based on the current market rates and everything like that. They're going to look at the current like rents that it's getting. They'll also take into consideration your plan and your business plan of where you want to get the rents to. And if it's feasible and they trust the market and have seen that done before, they might even take only the pro forma rents to like underwrite it and allow you to purchase it at a higher price than it would be if you were just doing it on the current rents. It's a lot of flexibility in the fact that you can ask for a lot of things with commercial bankers and lenders. Like you can ask for construction money, you can ask for higher LTV, lower LTV. You can mess with the prepayment penalty because a lot of them will want prepayment penalties of like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which means you pay like 5% the first year if you sell, 4% of the loan amount, whatever. You can like mix and match those to like change the rate, to change the terms, etc. And then the great thing about commercial is that it's a relationship. Like in real estate, everything's relationship, right? So if you work with them once, they might not give you like the greatest terms ever, but once they see you succeed with the first one, then you start having more ability to cater and be more flexible and be more creative with them and get even better loans. Because you got to think about them. Banks have investors or they have deposits from people that are banking with them, and their goal is to make them, their APR or whatever that they're getting from like their CDs or savings, etc. And then the bank just wants to take the top off of whatever's left over. So say like they're gonna give their bank people that bank with them like 4% APY. They're gonna want to get loans that can get them like 6, 7, 8%. So then they can make like that additional 2, 3, 4% on top of the money that they're lending, which is partially from what the people are depositing and then partially what they get from the government as well when the government gives out money to banks. But once you have a mind of a lender, I think that's why it's so important to really understand lending, because once you understand how their business works, you can negotiate so much better to get better terms because you understand what they need, what they're looking for, and then you can cater the terms to be a win-win situation between yourself and the bank as well. And sorry, that was a lot.
That's great because it brings other questions to my mind. It makes me think of other things as well. And one of the things that I found, at least in the Colorado market, is the importance of working with a local community bank that actually understands our market. They understand what's going on here. I once had a client that was putting 50% down on a restaurant that actually had income. He's a restaurateur himself. It was netting, I think, $1,300 a month after the mortgage, and all the NOI was $1,300 a month. And putting 50% down. He used National, and literally a week before closing, the National group had not even ordered the appraisal for the property.
Oh, geez.
And then come to find out, they had farmed it out to someone in Arizona to do the underwriting, and they came back and said, we can't do this deal. And it's like, 50% down. It's not like it was an SBA loan that was 10% down, or anything like that. It was a legit deal. And so I tell people all the time, talk to a few different community banks and find out, because every lender has a different appetite for different things. So just if one lender says no, that doesn't mean that you're not qualified. It just means that they don't have the appetite for this type of property. Maybe they have a huge portfolio of multifamily and they're like, we don't want to do any more multifamily, but we will do retail property. So I think that's questions that need to be asked. And again, going back to that tenacity of just keeping at it and asking the questions and going for it. So what should an investor look for in a commercial lender?
So you want to look for in a commercial lender is basically like you were saying there, like what's their appetite for whatever you're trying to do. And that's as simple as just reaching out to like the commercial lending, vice president or loan officer that is part of that bank and just being like, what are you guys looking for currently? Like I'm looking to buy value add multifamily. Are you guys in any appetite for that? And they'll tell you, they'll be like, nope, we don't want it. We don't want it at all. Unless it's like, they might be like, we don't want it at all unless it's like 60% down and like in this specific market. Then you can be like, all right, I'm not going to come to you guys.
Wow.
But you want to just communicate with them and understand what they're looking for. And then that's where you can kind of decide who to go down the road of, working with or sending them the information, sending them the data that they need to see if it can work out. And I would, the way that I find like a good lender is I am a lender. So at a heart, I've done it. So I can literally just email a lender and give them exactly what they need to give me like an idea right off the bat if it'll work or not. And as you talk to lenders more and go through property analysis and things, you'll understand what they look for. So then you can kind of put together just like a packet and just shoot it off. Because normally what I do is I create like a little PDF packet that has everything they need. It has like the breakdown of profit, loss, expenses, what the performer is, what our rent increase plan is going to be, what our business plan is going to be, who we are, like myself, if I have partners, who our mentors are, who past projects that we might have done, and just information about the property. And then I just shoot it off to like a ton of lenders that I've worked with, and they'll usually get back to you. But yeah, like always double check lenders' terms by talking to multiple because they can get all over the place. Like one might come back and be like, yeah, we'll give you like 8% rate with 3 points and 70% LTV. And you're like, wow, that seems really high. I might be screwed. Like this property's not going to work. But then another one might give you, 80% LTV, 7% rate with like 1.5 points. And you're like, oh, wait, this is actually looking better. So just don't be afraid of like really shopping around, I would say. But once you find a lender that you like working with as a person and just as a business and as a bank too, always like try to work with them after the fact because once you do one deal with them anyway, you can start building that relationship and they'll start being more flexible and be more interested in having a better appetite for the deals that you bring.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I've got a lot more questions, but I know we're coming up on time, so I'm just going to ask a few more questions. And I think one of the things I want to kind of touch on is how do you think that new investors can transition into commercial real estate successfully?
Um, I would say it depends what they're doing right now. So like if they're not doing any real estate at all, the best way is to find a loan officer and a real estate agent or a real estate broker that specializes in commercial because then they can kind of handhold you and teach you the beginning ways as you're learning yourself, listen to podcasts and reading, just to get an understanding of, what you might want to dive into. If you are currently like doing residential investing, you want to tap into commercial, I would say start small, like start with like a 5 unit or like a 6 unit, something that's just commercial. So then you can get a taste or an understanding of like NOI and how you can really like navigate that and increase the property value. But I will say I do both residential and commercial. Residential, you can make like money pretty quick with like fix and flips and stuff, which is great. But the real money is, yeah, in commercial because even though it might take some more time, you have so much more control once you underwrite and understand your business plan of like increasing the NOI that you can get wealthy pretty substantially by going the commercial way. So some people think like bigger the harder. I think bigger the easier because there's just less risk and there's more numbers and values to play with and there's more flexibility to be able to like increase the property's value. So it gets really fun once you get in there.
Yeah, and maybe I'm biased, but I do think having the right broker is very, very important
Oh
and
yeah.
a broker that understands the sect of commercial real estate that you're wanting to get into. Do they understand retail, industrial, all of those different things? Find a broker and ask questions. And I tell people, go look at Google reviews. Make sure you're doing your due diligence, that you will have somebody that is willing to spend the time to make sure that you are successful. And so
Yep.
so what would be the biggest lesson, Wendell, that you've learned in scaling your commercial real estate portfolio?
I would say just don't be like afraid. And I know people say this all the time too, is like if you find a good deal, even if you don't have the money, if you find a good deal, the money will come. Which is true. But yeah, it's stressful because like if you find a deal and you get it under contract, you're like, I'll have the money. Uh, just trust me, like there's a lot of people out there that really want to get into real estate. They don't have the time, or you just go to network events and you find people that are looking for deals. You found a deal. You're like, hey, I found this deal. Would you like to come in on it? They're like, yes, absolutely. Um, just don't be afraid, but don't overextend yourself to the point that you're taking like a huge risk that could potentially bankrupt you. Just have, I mean, it depends on your risk tolerance, but uh, yeah, that's kind of my idea of it,
Yeah.
or uh, yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, obviously people need to educate themselves. Are there any books or resources, podcasts, obviously one that people can listen to? Are there any specific books or resources that you recommend?
I would say if you're a newer investor, a lot of Brandon Turner's books are fantastic. So Brandon Turner was part of Bigger Pockets. Now he's part of the Better Life Tribe. That's what he runs, and he has like his own podcast as well. Um, but his books are very good because it gives you a wide range of like residential, commercial, just an idea, like a Barney style idea of what you can do in real estate, and that'll just open up your mind. And then you can start diving into like specific niches that you can like that you're more interested in. So if it's retail, you can start like looking at more retail books. If it's apartment complexes, look at more of those. If it's residential, you can look at more fix and flip type stuff. But those books are fantastic. And then Bigger Pockets podcast is great too. That's always a good one. They have so many podcasts, so many episodes. You can literally type in there probably like commercial retail stabilization, and then you'll see like 12 podcasts pop up, and you can like listen to specific niche ideas. And yeah, I would say, I always talk about how you want to build yourself as a person to be able to be successful in real estate anyway. So you want to I call them they call it self-help books or whatever, but like The Power of One More is a good book by Ed Milet. And it's really just telling you like it just takes one more contact, one more call, one more networking event, one more anything to possibly change your life. So don't always give up. Like don't give up. Real estate's hard. You see the gurus online saying like I made $1 million in 10 days. They're lying. It's not that, it's not that easy. It's a, it's a slow grind that, yes, eventually you might hit like that home run grand slam deal. But yeah, just don't listen to the gurus online saying that and especially the ones selling courses. They did like one real estate deal and they're making money off selling courses now. So they have no idea what they're talking about. So
That's one thing that I'm glad you brought that up, because there's so much I get in my Instagram feed and my Facebook feed. You know, take this class and you're going to be a millionaire. Take this
yeah.
class, you'll be able to break into commercial real estate, and that's not the way that it works. They're sitting there raking in money from all these classes, and you're right. I think there's a bit of them being out of touch because they're not out there on the ground every single day. They're about making
Mhm.
money to line their pockets, and so I'm glad you brought that up because I think that is a potential pitfall. And obviously people can listen to your podcast, Real Estate Take. They can check out Hammerhead Capital and then also connect with you. If there's investors that want to collaborate and they need some guidance, they can reach out to you. And we'll make sure that all of your contact information is available in the notes for the podcast so people can reach out to you. And so I just want to end with a question that I try to remember to do every podcast. And I got this from Steve Ramona, who's a great podcaster. But I thought it's just a super interesting question. He asked me this question when I was on his podcast, and it really got me thinking. And so, say you're going to a restaurant, there's a table of 4 seats. You're taking one of them. There's 3 other seats at the table. If there's anybody that you could have you sit with you at the table, dead or alive, who would it be?
Dang, 3 people? Okay, put me on the spot.
That's
Um,
it doesn't
yeah,
have to be. If there's 1 or 2 that are kind of, top of mind, it's just one of those that it really got me thinking. Like, I think it kind of speaks to values and, what you're about.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably bring up. I've met him before, but he's a really good guy. But Brandon Turner would be one just because he's very insightful and positive, and he just has like a lot of good information. My mentor, I'd probably bring there currently, or my old mentor that helped me along with the fix and flipping, Camp Cathcart, who's really good. They just both have like such good morals and ideas of helping people in the space, and they're super smart too on the real estate space. And then number 3, let's see. I think it'd be cool to just have like George Washington there, see how much of a badass that dude was. Like,
I love that. I love that. Well, man, I appreciate your time so much. This has been very informative, and I know our listeners are going to be able to get a lot of great information to be able to continue their journey. So I appreciate you sharing your time and your expertise with us today, and I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Caleb, and yeah, great podcast, and yeah, looking forward to keeping in touch.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Make sure you subscribe wherever you can and give Wendell a follow as well. And we appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking to you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode of Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. I hope you found value in today's conversation and feel more confident about navigating the world of commercial real estate. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. You can connect with me, Caleb David, and the team at David Commercial Real Estate. Just check the show notes for more information. Thanks for listening, and remember, creating space is more than just real estate. It's about building community. See you next time.